Admiral Park stood in the dim light of the command center, his weathered face looking even older in the blue glow of the holographic battle map. He rubbed his eyes, trying to focus on the countless red dots overwhelming the green ones. Another day, another defeat. The war had aged him beyond his 53 years. His once black hair had turned almost completely gray, a testament to the burden of command during this seemingly endless conflict. Admiral, General Kim's forces have been pushed back from the Nova system, Commander Lee said quietly, approaching with a data tablet in hand. The young commander had only known war his entire adult life. That's our 5th retreat this cycle. Park nodded silently. The Nova system had been their last stronghold in that sector. Its loss meant thousands of coalition civilian refugees would now be under Velrathi control. The supply lines to the Earthen colonies are now completely cut off, Commander Lee continued, swiping through battlefield reports. His eyes revealed the same exhaustion that plagued them all. We've lost contact with our outposts there. Across the room, Captain Song was briefing a group of junior officers. Her voice carried across the quiet command center. Based on current resource depletion rates and battle statistics, our models predict this war will continue for at least another century before any decisive victory. A century more. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Many officers glanced down, shoulders slumping further. They had already been fighting for over 20 years. The thought of generations growing up knowing nothing but this conflict was almost too much to bear. Admiral Park turned away from the battle map. Call the War Council. We need to meet. Hours later, in the secure chamber deep within Proxima Station, Elder June called the emergency meeting to order. The Coalition War Council members sat around a circular table, representing the 12 main species that had banded together against the Velrathi Empire's expansion. The situation becomes more dire with each passing day, Elder June said, his voice carrying the weight of his 200 years. The eldest member of the council, he had seen conflicts come and go, but nothing like this. The Velrathi have taken 3 more resource-rich systems this month alone. Admiral Park stood to deliver his report. Our forces are stretched beyond capacity. The Velrathi's breeding program gives them a 3-to-1 advantage in troop numbers, and their hive-mind tactical coordination outmaneuvers our communication systems. The room fell silent, as holographic projections showed the steady loss of territory over the past 5 years. Green areas representing coalition space shrank, while red areas of Velrathi control expanded like a virus. Their resource conversion, efficiency is simply better than ours, added Representative Bock, the Council's economic advisor. His species, known for their mathematical abilities, had run countless simulations. For every ship we build, they construct 3. For every soldier we train, they deploy a squad. Captain Song stepped forward, her slight frame belying her strategic brilliance. We've analyzed all possible scenarios using our most advanced prediction models. She projected a series of probability charts that showed vanishingly small chances of coalition victory. Even our most optimistic projections show the war lasting at least another century, with only a 30% chance of eventual victory. Elder June's assistant leaned over to whisper something, and the ancient leader nodded gravely. We've just received word that the Velrathi have destroyed the colony on Neros IV, Elder June announced. 40,000 civilians, no survivors. The room erupted in murmurs and cries of outrage. Neros IV had been a peaceful agricultural world with no military significance. Admiral Park slammed his fist on the table. This goes beyond their usual tactics. They're not just trying to defeat us anymore. They're trying to break our will to resist. Perhaps it is time we consider diplomatic options, suggested Council Member Tay, representing the Coalition's more pacifist worlds. Diplomacy? General Kim scoffed, his battle armor still showing scorch marks from his narrow escape from Nova. The Velrathi Emperor has made it clear, submission or extinction are our only choices. Admiral Park rubbed the bridge of his NCB nose. He'd been awake for nearly 50 hours straight, coordinating evacuation efforts across 3 systems. What about the unexplored regions? Are there any species we haven't contacted who might join our cause? Captain Song shook her head. We've reached out to every known spacefaring civilization in our database. Most are already part of the Coalition, or have fallen to the Velrathi. There is, Commander Lee hesitated, then continued, there is one system our long-range scouts recently discovered. Preliminary reports suggest an industrialized civilization, but they don't appear to have achieved faster-than-light travel yet. Elder June frowned. Pre-FTL species are protected under coalition law. We cannot involve them in our war. With respect, Elder, Admiral Park said quietly, if we lose this war, there will be no coalition law. There will be no protection for any species, developed or not. The Velrathi will consume them all eventually. The council members looked at each other, the weight of moral compromise heavy in the air. Where is this system? Asked General Kim. Commander Lee brought up a star chart showing a spiral galaxy. He zoomed in on an unremarkable yellow star near the edge of an outer spiral arm. The natives call their planet Earth, the Coalition Scout. Ship Dauntless shuddered as another enemy blast narrowly missed its port side. Captain Han gripped the command chair tightly, his knuckles white with tension. Shields at 14%, shouted his first officer. We can't take another direct hit. Han's mind raced. The Dauntless was no match for the 3 Velrathi cruisers. Hunting them through the asteroid belt, they had been on a routine scouting mission when their sensors picked up the enemy vessels. Now they were running for their lives. Emergency jump, Han ordered. Use whatever coordinates are in the system. The navigation officer looked up in alarm. Sir, the closest plotted point is toward uncharted space. We haven't surveyed that region yet. Better unknown space than certain death, Han replied grimly. Execute jump now. The Dauntless's engines whined as they powered up the jump sequence. Space twisted around them, and the ship vanished just as another Velrathi blast scorched through the vacuum where they had been moments before. When the jump ended, the crew found themselves in an unfamiliar star system. Scanners immediately picked up 9 planets orbiting a yellow sun. Life signs? Han asked, straightening his rumpled uniform. The science officer's eyes widened as she studied her readouts. Sir, the 3rd planet from the sun, it's teeming with life. And there are clear signs of an industrialized civilization. Han moved to look over her shoulder. Technology level? Pre-FTL, but surprisingly advanced. They've reached their own moon, have orbital satellites, and appear to be in the early digital age. Han stroked his chin thoughtfully. The Coalition needed allies, even primitive ones. Take us into orbit, but maintain stealth shielding. I don't want to cause panic. For 3 days, the Dauntless crew observed Earth, intercepting communications and learning what they could about the planet's inhabitants. Captain Han was intrigued by the humans' resourcefulness, despite their technological limitations. They're at war with themselves, the communications officer reported. Multiple nations, different ideologies, they seem quite adept at conflict. Han nodded slowly. Perhaps that could be useful. He made his decision and sent an encrypted message to Coalition Command. Within days, a diplomatic vessel arrived, carrying Ambassador Tay and Chief Diplomat Su. Diplomat Su reviewed the Dauntless's findings with obvious disdain. This species has barely left their own atmosphere. What possible value could they offer? The Coalition? They're inventive, Han argued. Their technology advances at a remarkable pace, and they have a unique approach to warfare. They're savages, Su countered, pointing to images of human conflicts. Look at their history. Constant bloodshed over resources, ideology, even slight differences in appearance. Ambassador Tay listened, silently, her expression thoughtful. As the Coalition's chief diplomat, she had seen many cultures. Something about these humans intrigued her. Perhaps that very savagery is what we need, she finally said. The Velrathi fight as a hive mind. We've been unable to counter their perfect coordination. These humans' chaotic approach might be the unpredictable element we need. Security Chief Wu, who had accompanied the diplomatic team, shook his head firmly. It's too risky. They have no concept of galactic politics. Introducing them to advanced technology could be catastrophic. The Coalition Charter forbids interference with pre-FTL species, Su added. Ambassador Tay stood and walked to the viewport, watching the blue planet turn slowly below them. The Charter also empowers me to make exceptions in times of existential crisis. I believe this qualifies. Her decision made, Tay authorized first contact. The team selected a remote area in a nation called Norway for their landing, hoping to minimize wider panic. The human representatives, scientists and government officials hastily assembled after the landing stared in awe at the coalition representatives. Despite using translator devices, communication was difficult and filled with misunderstandings. Diplomat Sue made little effort to hide his contempt. When shown Earth's most advanced computer, he laughed outright. Our children's toys have more processing power. But Ambassador Tay took a different approach. She spoke respectfully of Earth's achievements and explained the coalition's desperate situation. To her surprise, instead of fear, she saw excitement in many human eyes. "You're saying there's a whole galactic community out there?" asked one scientist, her voice filled with wonder rather than terror. "And you need our help?" Meanwhile, back in coalition space, news of the discovery had reached the Velrathi Empire. Emperor Day lounged on his throne, his scaled skin catching the light as he chuckled at the report. "They found primitives on a backwater planet and think this will change the war." He waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Let them waste resources, trying to uplift savages." War Minister Jin studied the limited data they had intercepted about Earth. These humans have not even unified their own planet. They fight among themselves over imaginary boundaries. "Pathetic," Emperor Day agreed. "Show me the latest conquests. I tire of hearing about insignificant species." As Jin changed the subject to more recent Velrathi victories, neither of them gave Earth another thought. It was just another primitive world that would eventually fall under Velrathi dominion once the coalition was crushed. Back on Earth, the human representatives had voted to accept the coalition's invitation to join the Galactic Alliance. Within days, small teams of coalition scientists and engineers arrived to begin sharing technology. Ambassador Tay watched as humans absorbed new concepts at an astonishing rate. Where other species might take decades to understand coalition technology, humans were asking insightful questions within hours. "They learn quickly," she remarked to Captain Han. "Let's hope quickly enough," he replied. "The Velrathi won't give them much time." Little did any of them know just how quickly humanity would rise to the challenge, or how severely the Velrathi had underestimated the newest members of the Galactic Coalition. The coalition delegation sat in stunned silence as United Earth Representative Kang finished speaking. They had expected months of deliberation, years of preparation, and decades of technological uplift before humans could contribute meaningfully to the war effort. Instead, Kang had just outlined an immediate action plan that would have Earth forces ready to join the fight within months. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Ambassador Tay said, leaning forward in her seat. The ornate conference room in what had once been the United Nations headquarters now served as the primary meeting place between human and alien representatives. "You're proposing to begin military production immediately, using a hybrid of Earth and coalition technology." "That's correct," Kang replied, her voice steady and confident. Unlike many Earth politicians who had panicked at the news of an interstellar war, Kang had immediately seen both the danger and the opportunity. "We've already converted 17 major manufacturing facilities to produce components for your ship designs. Our engineers have been working around the clock." Security Chief Wu shook his head in disbelief. "But you've only had access to our technical specifications for 3 weeks. Kang smiled. 3 weeks is a long time for humans when we're motivated. The coalition representatives exchanged glances. Their species typically deliberated for years before making major decisions. The human capacity for rapid adaptation was both impressive and slightly alarming. "Perhaps a demonstration would help," Kang suggested, nodding to her aide. The lights dimmed, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the table. Military strategist Moon stepped forward, a compact man with intense eyes that had seen combat on 3 continents before the alien arrival united Earth. "Coalition friends," Moon began, "you've shared your war strategies with us and we thank you. Now let me share humanity's history of warfare in return." For the next hour, Moon presented a concise but thorough overview of human military history, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. He highlighted humanity's constant innovation in the face of adversity, the rapid development of weapons technology during world wars, and the evolution of tactics from frontal assaults to guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and cyber warfare. In just the last century, Moon explained, pointing to various conflicts highlighted in the hologram, humans went from fighting with horses and basic firearms to developing nuclear weapons, stealth technology, and precision-guided munitions. The Coalition officers watched with growing amazement. Species across the galaxy certainly fought wars, but none had shown such rapid evolution of tactics and technology, nor such variety in approach. The key difference, Moon continued, is that the Velrathi fight as a unified mind with perfect coordination. But that uniformity is also a weakness. They've never faced an enemy who changes tactics unpredictably, who employs deception as a primary strategy rather than as a last resort. Ambassador Tay nodded slowly, beginning to understand. You're suggesting asymmetric warfare on a galactic scale? Exactly, Moon confirmed. Your reports indicate the Velrathi expect conventional responses. They anticipate your movements because they understand how your species think. Humans think differently. After the presentation, the Coalition delegation requested a tour of Earth's military preparations. What they saw astonished them even further. General Yoon met them at what had once been a civilian airport, now converted into a military training facility. Hundreds of pilots ran between hangars, where simulator pods had been set up, each replicating the controls of Coalition fighter craft. We've condensed your standard 3-year pilot training program into 6 months, Yoon explained, as they watched humans practice combat maneuvers in the simulators. It's intense, but our people are adapting well. 6 months? Exclaimed a Coalition flight instructor. That's impossible. The neural pathways alone. Humans form neural pathways quickly under pressure, Yoon interrupted with a slight smile. It's how we've survived on a planet where nearly everything was trying to kill us at some point. At another facility, Engineer Sun led them through vast warehouses where Earth technologies were being merged with Coalition designs. Workers swarmed over half-built spacecraft, installing components that looked like strange hybrids of alien and human engineering. Your shield technology is impressive, Sun explained, pointing to modifications being made to a standard Coalition shield generator. But it draws too much power and leaves vulnerability gaps during recharge cycles. We've adapted our own experimental phase shift technology to create a layered approach. She demonstrated on a small model, showing how the modified shields could cycle through different frequencies to prevent enemy weapons from being calibrated against them. This is unorthodox, admitted a Coalition engineer. Our shield designs have been standardized for centuries. That's exactly the problem, Sun replied. The Velrathi have had centuries to learn how to counter them. Throughout the tour, the Coalition representatives saw similar scenes repeated, humans working at incredible speeds, adapting and innovating with a desperate energy that their own species had lost during the long, grinding war. As they returned to their ship that evening, Ambassador Tay was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she spoke to her staff. I've visited over 300 worlds in my diplomatic career, she said softly. I've never seen anything like this. Most species, when told about the Velrathi threat, either panic or deny. They bargain for more time or retreat into isolationism. Humans are certainly different, Security Chief Wu agreed. His initial skepticism had been shaken by what he'd witnessed. They're not just joining our war, Tay realized. They're transforming it. Back at the United Earth headquarters, Representative Kang met with her leadership team late into the night. The planet's former nations had set aside centuries of conflict with remarkable speed once the existential threat became clear. Production quotas are exceeding targets by 17%, reported the industrial coordinator. The new alloys from Coalition technology have solved our heat resistance problems. Military recruitment continues to outpace our capacity to train, added General Yoon. We've had to turn away volunteers. Kang looked around the table at her team. Just months ago they had been strangers, often from opposing nations. Now they worked together seamlessly toward humanity's integration into an interstellar war. The Coalition expected us to take decades to reach combat readiness, Kang said. We'll be ready in months. I want everyone to understand what that means. The room fell silent, waiting. "It means," she continued, "that the Velrathi have no idea what's coming." The Velrathi commander hissed in frustration as the coalition ships vanished from his sensors yet again. This was the fourth time this cycle his battle group had been lured into an asteroid field, only to have their targets disappear without a trace. "Where are they?" he demanded, talons clicking against the command console in agitation. No ship can mask its engine signature so completely. His tactical officer had no answer. The new coalition tactics defied everything the Velrathi knew about space combat. Instead of the predictable formation battles they had grown accustomed to, the enemy now struck from nowhere, caused chaos, and disappeared. What the Velrathi commander couldn't know was that Colonel Hyun was floating just 3 kilometers away, his ship powered down to minimal life support, effectively invisible among the asteroid debris. Hyun smiled thinly as he watched the Velrathi vessels through specialized sensors his team had developed. "The key to defeating a superior force," Hyun explained to the coalition officers crowded in his small command room, "is to never fight on their terms. The Velrathi expect direct confrontation. They're adapted to win those battles, so we don't give them what they expect." Hyun had spent years fighting in Earth's most dangerous conflict zones before joining the coalition war effort. He had faced better-equipped enemies and survived through cunning and unconventional thinking. Now he applied those same principles to space warfare. "They call it guerrilla tactics," explained a human liaison to the bewildered coalition officers. "Hit and run, ambush, psychological warfare, fighting from the shadows." The coalition military had initially resisted Hyun's methods. Their honor codes and traditions of warfare had no place for such approaches. But after 20 years of devastating losses, pragmatism finally overcame tradition. "Power up on my mark," Hyun ordered as the frustrated Velrathi ships began to move away. "Target their sensor arrays only. Disable, don't destroy." His small fleet of modified ships surged to life, emerging from hiding spots throughout the asteroid field. They struck with precise, coordinated fire, crippling the Velrathi vessels before disappearing again into the darkness of space. 5 systems. Away, Special Forces Captain Min was demonstrating another aspect of human warfare. Her team's shuttle was indistinguishable from the Velrathi supply vessels as it approached the massive space station serving as the enemy's forward operating base. Coalition engineers had perfectly replicated the Velrathi ship signatures, while Min's team had studied enemy movements and communications patterns for weeks. "Remember," Min told her mixed human coalition team, "we have exactly 17 minutes. From docking to placement. Move fast, stay silent." The coalition soldiers looked nervous. They were accustomed to open battle, not infiltration. The humans, however, moved with quiet confidence. Earth's special forces had perfected these tactics. Over centuries, when the shuttle docked, they moved through the station like ghosts. The Velrathi never detected the small devices Min's team attached to critical infrastructure junctions. 3 hours later, when they were safely away, the devices activated simultaneously. The station's power grid collapsed, its weapon systems fried and its communications array disabled. "No casualties," Min reported back to Coalition Command. "The station is neutralized and will require at least 2 months to repair." The Coalition generals were astounded. They had been planning a major fleet action to take out that station, an attack that would have cost thousands of lives. "These humans don't just fight differently," one general remarked. "They redefine what fighting means." Back on Earth, scientist Jay hunched over her workstation, surrounded by a team of human and coalition engineers. She had been analyzing Velrathi shield technology for months, looking for weaknesses no one else had found. "Their shields operate on a rotating frequency," she explained, pointing to her simulations. "But the pattern isn't random. It follows a complex but predictable mathematical sequence." The coalition engineers looked skeptical. Their best minds had studied Velrathi shields for decades without finding exploitable patterns. "The sequence repeats every 73 hours, Jay continued. "We've developed an algorithm that can predict the exact frequencies they'll use and when." "Even if you're right," argued a coalition scientist, "what good does it do? Our weapons can't be recalibrated quickly enough to match changing shield frequencies." Jay smiled. "That's why we're not trying to match them. We're going to use their own shield frequencies against them. Her team had developed a revolutionary weapon, a resonance cascade device that would amplify the Velrathi's own shield energy and turn it back upon their ships. It was a completely new approach that no one in the galaxy had attempted before. 3 weeks later, the new technology faced its first major test at the Battle of Centauri Gate. The strategic choke point had been under Velrathi control for 7 years. Previous coalition attempts to recapture it had ended in disaster. Fleet Commander Du watched from his flagship's bridge, his expression grim. Despite months of impressive human innovations, he remained skeptical. Centuries of military tradition were hard to abandon. The human tactics are too risky, he muttered to his aide. Their ships are moving too close to the enemy formation. Indeed, the human-led coalition vessels were taking an approach that seemed suicidal, driving straight toward the heart of the Velrathi fleet. The enemy commanders, recognizing what appeared to be a desperate charge, moved to surround the attacking force. It was exactly what Colonel Hyun had predicted they would do. "Activate resonance devices now," came the calm order from the human commander. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the Velrathi fleet, shield generators began to overload, creating cascading energy failures. Ships lost power, weapons went offline, and communications failed. Meanwhile, hidden coalition forces that had used Hyun's stealth tactics to position themselves throughout the battlefield suddenly revealed themselves, striking at the defenseless Velrathi vessels. The battle that coalition strategists had predicted would take weeks was over in hours. The Centauri Gate, lost for 7 years, returned to coalition control with minimal casualties. Fleet Commander Du stood in stunned silence as the reports came in. The victory was so complete, so overwhelming, that he struggled to process it. "I've fought the Velrathi for 30 years, he said finally to the human liaison officer beside him. "I've never seen them routed like this. Never." In the weeks that followed, the same story repeated across a dozen battlefronts. The Velrathi, who had fought the same way for centuries, had no defense against humanity's constantly evolving tactics. Where the Velrathi expected direct confrontation, humans used misdirection. Where the enemy prepared for a long siege, humans found ways to slip past defenses and strike at vulnerable targets. At coalition headquarters, Fleet Commander Du, once the most vocal critic of human involvement, now stood before the War Council as their strongest advocate. "The Velrathi have begun to retreat from systems they've held for decades," he reported, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. "For the first time in this long war, we are not just holding ground, we are reclaiming it." Elder June studied the battle reports thoughtfully. "These humans have accomplished in months what we could not in years. They don't think like us," Du replied, "and that's precisely why they're winning. The Velrathi cannot predict what they themselves cannot imagine." The message arrived during the third shift of the Coalition Command Center. The communications officer almost ignored it, assuming it was another Velrathi trick. They had become desperate in recent months, resorting to false surrenders and deceptive transmissions, but something about this one seemed different. "Sir," she called to Admiral Park, who had barely slept in the past week as they pressed their advantage across 3 fronts. "You need to see this." Admiral Park rubbed his tired eyes and studied the transmission. His expression changed from skepticism to shock as he read the authentication codes. "Verify this immediately," he ordered, his voice tight with controlled emotion. The verification came back positive. The message was genuine, sent directly from Velrathi High Commander Gil himself. After decades of brutal war and just 13 months after humanity had joined the fight, the unthinkable had happened. The Velrathi Empire was asking for peace. The news spread through coalition space like wildfire. On worlds that had known nothing but war for a generation, people gathered in streets and communal spaces, first in disbelief, then in cautious celebration. In the Coalition War Council chamber, Elder June called for order as excited conversations filled the room. "We must proceed carefully," he cautioned, his ancient voice cutting through the noise. "The Velrathi are a proud species. Their request for peace talks suggests desperation, but cornered predators are most dangerous." Representative Kang, speaking for Earth, nodded in agreement. "On our world we have a saying, The hardest part of winning a war is securing a lasting peace. The War Council debated for hours about how to respond. Some military leaders wanted to press their advantage, to push for total surrender. Others feared a trap. The Velrathi have lost 27 major battles in the past 6 months, Fleet Commander Du pointed out. Their supply lines are in shambles, their command structure fractured. Our intelligence suggests genuine collapse, not deception. Peace negotiator Jin, who had spent her career studying Velrathi culture, offered her assessment. High Commander, Gil is from the moderate faction of their leadership. His request likely represents a genuine desire to end a war they now know they cannot win. The Council eventually agreed to peace talks on neutral Proxima Station, the same place where, just over a year ago, they had desperately discussed reaching out to a primitive planet called Earth. As preparations for the summit began, human diplomat Ho was asked to serve as special advisor to the coalition negotiation team. Ho had decades of experience mediating international conflicts on Earth before first contact changed everything. The key, Ho explained to peace negotiator Jin as they prepared their approach, is to give the Velrathi a path that preserves their dignity while ensuring real peace. Humiliated enemies become future enemies. Jin looked surprised. You suggest leniency after all they've done? Ho shook his head. Not leniency, wisdom. The peace must be just but sustainable. If we demand too much, we plant the seeds for the next war. The peace summit began 3 weeks later. Coalition security was tight as the Velrathi delegation arrived. High Commander Gil himself led their team, his scaled skin dulled from stress, his once imposing frame somewhat diminished. The negotiations were tense at first. Centuries of hatred could not be erased in a few meetings. The Velrathi expected harsh terms and came prepared to resist what they could. They were unprepared for the approach designed by Ho and Jin. The coalition does not seek the destruction. So of the Velrathi people or culture, Jin began following Ho's carefully crafted strategy. We seek an end to aggression and a stable galaxy where all species can thrive. The proposed terms were firm but fair. The Velrathi would withdraw from conquered territories, dismantle their most destructive weapons, and provide reparations to devastated worlds. But they would maintain their sovereignty and be included in new galactic governance structures. High Commander Gil studied the human members of the coalition team with undisguised curiosity. Your species, he said during a recess, addressing Ho directly, fights with unexpected ferocity, yet you advocate for moderation in victory. This is not consistent with our understanding of predator psychology. Ho smiled slightly. Humans have learned through bitter experience that how you end a war determines how long your peace will last. After 7 tense days, the peace treaty was ready. The signing ceremony took place in the Grand Hall of Proxima Station, broadcast across the galaxy to countless worlds that had only known conflict for a generation. As Coalition Leader Jun and High Commander Gil pressed their identifiers to the treaty, a profound silence fell across the chamber. The moment seemed too monumental for mere applause or celebration. Historians will call this the one-year miracle, Elder Jun said afterward, addressing the assembled representatives from hundreds of worlds. When future generations ask how a war expected to last another century ended in just 13 months, the answer will be simple: humanity. In a formal ceremony that followed, Coalition Leader Jun presented Earth's representatives with the highest honor the Alliance could bestow, recognition as defenders of the galaxy. The ornate crystal monument would later be placed in a museum built on the site of humanity's first contact with the Coalition. Humans did not merely join our war, Jun declared. They transformed it. They showed us that our centuries of tradition had become chains limiting our imagination. In the months that followed, as the galaxy began the long process of healing, humanity's approach to peace proved as surprising as their approach to war. Earth engineers developed new technologies specifically designed for rapid planetary reconstruction. Human medical teams created rehabilitation protocols for veterans suffering from the psychological wounds of prolonged conflict. Most surprisingly to the coalition species, humanity pushed for inclusive rebuilding programs that extended even to former Velrathi worlds struggling with the collapse of their empire. Our enemies of yesterday need not be our enemies tomorrow, Representative Kang explained, when questioned about this policy. Desperate people become dangerous people. We help them rebuild not just because it's moral, but because it's practical. On Fare, a formerly contested border world, a mixed team of humans, coalition species, and even a few Velrathi engineers worked together to restore a devastated ecosystem. Plants from Earth proved remarkably adaptable to alien soils, helping heal landscapes scarred by weapons fire. Fleet Commander Du, visiting the planet to assess reconstruction efforts, found himself working alongside a Velrathi environmental specialist. The awkwardness of their first interaction gradually gave way to professional respect. "I fought your kind for 30 years, Du admitted, as they calibrated atmospheric sensors together. The Velrathi nodded, adjusting a setting. "I designed weapons to destroy your ships for 20. They worked in silence for a moment, before the Velrathi spoke again. "These humans, they are strange, aren't they? They fight like demons, yet rebuild like... I don't have a word for it." Du considered this. "I believe the human term is neighbors. Across the galaxy, other species watched humanity's integration into galactic society with new respect and, in some cases, concern. The speed with which humans had mastered advanced technologies, their unpredictable thinking, and their ability to unite former enemies in common cause marked them as a species unlike any other in known space. They achieved in 1 year what we could not in generations," a coalition historian noted. "One cannot help but wonder what they will accomplish in a century, or how the galaxy will change in their wake."